Institute, and I will shortly be handing over to Tracy Kolbe-Alexander, who's going to be moderating the session. But before we begin today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we are all meeting on today. Manna Institute respectfully acknowledges the First Nations peoples as the continuing custodians of this continent and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. The Institute honours the rich cultural heritage, beliefs, and enduring relationships to the lands and communities in which we all live, learn, and work. Today, I come to you from beautiful Awabakal country, and please feel free to mention where you're joining us today in the chat. Manna Institute also recognises the voices of lived experience of mental ill health and suicide, and we acknowledge that lived experience takes many different shapes and meanings to individuals. And we reaffirm our commitment today, the Manna webinar, to the inclusion of lived experience in all of Manna's work. So now, as a very exciting webinar that's happening today, I will be handing over to Tracy, who's going to introduce to you our wonderful speakers. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar looking at World Physical Activity Day. And I'm hoping that at the end of this webinar, you're all going to jump up and go for a little bit of a walk or a stroll. We have three speakers today. Each speaker will have 12 minutes to present something to you, and you will have a little bit of a chance to ask some questions. So please feel free to use the Q&A function or to raise your hand during question time. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Associate Professor Sjaan Gomersall. She's a research fellow and the Associate Director at the Health and Wellbeing Center for Research Innovation at the School of Human Movement and Nutrition Sciences. She's also a teaching and research academic at the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, and this is all at the University of Queensland. Sjaan's research focuses on understanding, measuring, and influencing physical activity, with a research program focused on improving physical activity in clinical populations and in partnerships with healthcare providers and settings. She works in collaboration with multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral teams, regularly collaborating with industry stakeholders and consumers. She is the president of the International Society for Physical Activity and Health and is the co-founder and the co-lead of the Asia Pacific Society for Physical Activities, Healthcare in Special Interest, Physical Activity in Healthcare Special Interest Group. And she's a rock star in my book, and I'm so excited to hear what Sjaan has to share with us today. Over to you, Sjaan.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I am just going to share my screen. You know, that little moment where you hope it all works okay. That's what I'm experiencing now. Hello, everybody. It's so nice to join you today. I have to say a very big thank you for the invitation and the privilege to be able to talk about my favourite thing, physical activity, with you all. It's a blessing and a privilege to be able to use Zoom to connect over these kind of means and to reach so many of you. But I do have to tell you, I can't see your faces. I can't see the chat while I'm talking. So I will rely on Tracy to get my attention if need be. And also I look forward to being able to chat with you and unpack some of this, hopefully, as we move toward the end of the seminar today. So I have the privilege really of setting the scene of the speakers and the theme that we have today for the seminar, so celebrating World Physical Activity Day. And Tracy did very generously give me a lovely introduction, but I will first, before I start, add my acknowledgement of country. I'm very fortunate to be in Brisbane or Meanjin, the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I am so lucky to actively commute every day to work and get to follow the line of the river, which, if you do look very closely, is embedded in that really beautiful picture there. So adding my acknowledgement of country and of the traditional owners to our introduction today. So Tracy gave me a lovely introduction, but I will just reiterate which particular hats I'm wearing today, because I do wear many of them, and this helps me as much as it might help you to kind of reiterate the voice from which I'm primarily speaking of. So my day job is through the University of Queensland. That's those two roles down the bottom there. I'm very fortunate to be in a leadership position with the Health and Wellbeing Centre for Research Innovation. In Queensland, our state prevention agency, so focused on health promotion, is Health and Wellbeing Queensland. And I'm in a very fortunate position where my role that you can see there is co-funded through Health and Wellbeing Queensland, through the government, and also the University of Queensland. My volunteer roles are those with the International Society for Physical Activity and Health, where I'm the current president. I work with the World Health Organization as a physical activity consultant, and then regionally in the Asia Pacific region, I'm involved with ASPA, which is the Asia Pacific Society for Physical Activity. My leadership role in that is very specifically around physical activity and healthcare, but I will speak today to some of the initiatives that ASPA have been driving in Australia and the Asia Pacific region more broadly. So I would like to start with, I hope that video doesn't start automatically. Great, it does not. I would like to start by sharing a video that has been put together by the World Health Organization. It's a brilliant video that really captures and summarises what it is that I'd like to set the scene of. So Tracy, when I hit play, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear the audio?
We live in a world beating with urgency, breathing with difficulty, breaking under necessity. We are a society consumed by technology, compact in proximity, choked by inactivity. We are global, we are responsible, we are trending, we are too inactive. Everyone, everywhere, every day. We have a plan. It's time to activate our governments, to activate our environment, to activate our society, to activate ourselves. It's time to activate movement, to activate improvement, to reverse our direction, to activate new trends. We need to alert you. We need to activate. Everyone, everywhere, every day.
Video. Great. That is a short film that the World Health Organization put together to promote the Global Action Plan for physical activity. And what I'm going to do with my first 10 minutes is to set the scene around the global, regional and local initiatives around physical activity and health promotion. Tracy has let me know that there is a wide range of people who attend these webinars. So some of you who will know things like these physical activity guidelines very well, and perhaps some of you who might be somewhat familiar with them, or you might be hearing them for the first time. The physical activity guidelines recommend that 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous physical activity is the minimum amount, as well as limiting sedentary time, and doing anything is better than doing nothing. Going up to 300 minutes per week or 60 minutes per day on at least 2 days per week, adding in those muscle strengthening activities. These are those guidelines for the adults, and of course there are guidelines for children, and these are the World Health Organization guidelines. So each country will also have their own guidelines. I've chosen to use the WHO guidelines today because we imminently may or may not have some new guidelines coming for Australia. And so rather than speak to some of the Australian ones now for adults, so bring your attention to the World Health Organization. Probably one of the more seminal pieces of work that has really set the scene in physical activity promotion worldwide is the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity. So in 2018, the World Health Organization published More Active People for a Healthier World, which is what the film that I just shared was put together to promote. It outlined a global collective plan for addressing physical inactivity. And at the time of the report and the time that the plan was first published, the statistics were about 1 in 4 adults and 3 in 4 adolescents who were inactive. The vision was more active people for a healthier world. The mission was to ensure that all people have access to safe and enabling environments and to diverse opportunities to be physically active in their daily lives, and connecting that with a means of improving individual and community health and contributing to social, cultural and economic development of all nations. Now, at the time, back in 2018, there was a target that was set, which was a 15% relative reduction in the global prevalence of physical inactivity in adults and adolescents by 2030. We were very excited by this target back in 2018, but as we all know, time goes very quickly. And we have had a recent global status report, recent 2022, illustrate that time does go quickly. 3 years old now, actually, global status report on physical activity, which showed that the progress toward that now we can see quite lofty goal is slow, and it's also unequal. And so the benefits that are being seen, or the relative proportions of increases in physical activity that are being seen across the world are demonstrating further inequity. The time is now was the call around the global status report on physical activity, and there has been a raft of different organisations and both at various levels, both global and regional as well as local, that have been trying to mobilise to be able to address this very wicked problem around inactivity. The other hat that I wear, of course, is for the International Society for Physical Activity. We work very closely aligned with the World Health Organization and the principles around GAPA. And for some time now, we've had a document and a resource collection called ISPA's 8 Investments That Work for Physical Activity. And I'll just briefly show you this associated video here. I will. There we go.
Sjaan, there's no sound on this one.
Not working. It doesn't matter for this one. And so that ISPA 8, no, don't start that again. Got it. So the ISPA 8 investments that work for physical activity is a ready-made kind of off-the-shelf document that synthesizes and summarizes the best way that money can be spent to address and improve physical inactivity levels. On the ISPA website is a whole raft of resources, as well as podcasts, sort of short, digestible little bits of information that are attached to either the 8 investments more broadly or each of those specific areas of focus. More regionally, in the Asia Pacific region, ASPA has just recently released an advocacy document attached to our upcoming change of government, which outlines the 6 priorities for investment in physical activity in Australia in terms of the next round of budget and budget plans for spending. So there is a call for a physical activity action plan for Australia, which would just be brilliant. Active schools, active transport, healthcare training, walking incentives, and a mass media mass campaign around movement. Though that document in detail can also be seen on the ASPA website, as well as a couple of other resources. In 10 minutes, there's not much I can do apart from give you a very quick whistle-stop tour. But I would encourage you to join societies like ISPA and or ASPA, as well as, of course, the connection that you have through the Manna Institute, and to be able to have a look at those seminal documents. So the GAPA, the 8 best investments, ASPA's current advocacy ask, and to stay connected with these organisations which are prioritising communicating the best evidence we have in science, but also for lobbying and advocating for the best things that we know will address physical inactivity. Thank you very much, Tracy. Hopefully that sets the scene.
Well, thank you, Sjaan. It was a whirlwind tour of setting the scene, and I think I posted to everybody to say we will make the links available to the videos as well as to the 8 investment documents. We do have 2 minutes for questions from the audience. And Alex, I'm not sure how I see where questions come in, but if anyone has questions, you can let myself or Alex know.
I was going to say, Tracy, so there's nothing in the question chat, but people are very welcome to add into that throughout the presentation. Then when we've got time, we can come back to those, but nothing there yet. So the challenge has been set for someone to ask the first question.
Thanks. So what we will do while people are thinking of questions for Sjaan, thank you very much, Sjaan. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Stuart Biddle. He's a research professor in the Centre for Health Research at the University of Southern Queensland. His current research is on sedentary behaviour and physical activity behaviour change, as well as mental health. And Stuart has also recently joined the Manna Institute. So be sure to, Stuart, we're probably going to try and pull you for lots of information going forward. He's ranked in the top 20 all-time worldwide for career-long citation impact in sports scientists, and is a clear-varied, highly cited researcher. Stuart's also been the author of a book, Psychology of Physical Activity, for over 30 years, with the 4th edition recently published. And he's been involved in the production of physical activity and sedentary behaviour guidelines for Australia, Canada, the UK, and the World Health Organization. And he has an honorary doctorate from the Norwegian School of Sports Sciences and the University of Thessaly, Greece. So by all that, you can see Stuart is a global leader. He's also my rugby union friend. So Stuart, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you and invite you to present and tell us more about all these guidelines and what's happening.
Thanks a lot, Tracy. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes, it is afternoon. Let me just first of all check. This is not going to be a big slideshow, but let me just check you can see a couple of key slides on.
We can see,
yes,
but it's
and
not,
it's on slideshow now. Yeah, okay, good.
Perfect.
Okay, so hi, everyone. Thanks, Sjaan. Great introduction there, great presentation. So I'm going to talk a bit about movement behavior guidelines. It's not going to be a lecture. It's going to be a few questions and comments and observations, having been involved, as Tracy said, with guidelines for many years. The first guidelines I got involved with were back in the mid-1990s in the UK. And I'm currently involved with the Australian guidelines that Sjaan mentioned, which is the revised guidelines for adults and older adults. They're currently submitted to government and are being considered. So they should be out at some time, I guess, later this year if all goes to plan. So it's quite a long time to be involved in guidelines. And what I've observed is, first of all, that the early guidelines tended to be very much around physical activity. Well, that's not surprising, but they then morphed into physical activity and sedentary behavior being very inactive sitting time, to put it rather in an oversimplified way, because that became a focus of research for a number of people around about the beginning of the millennium. And more recently, people have used the term movement behavior, which not only includes physical activity and sedentary behavior, but also sleep. And you can see from this diagram that these kind of interact with each other. So if you were to move those dials, if you like, those clock hands, it has implications for other behaviors. So, for example, if you slept less, would it lead to more sedentary time or more physical activity? LPA, by the way, is light physical activity, and MVPA is moderate to vigorous physical activity. So, and these interactions we tend to look at over a 24-hour period, because all of those should add up to 24 hours. And it's not the only way to look at this, but it is something that has been done in recent guidelines. And we've adopted the 24-hour guidelines model for the latest update of the Australian adult and older adult guidelines. But the WHO guidelines that I was also involved with around 2020 do not adopt the 24-hour model specifically. But of course, they talk about all these movement behaviors, but not necessarily sleep. And over this period, you tended to find, way back, our initial work was not exactly sort of waving a finger in the air to see what we thought, but there was a lot of evidence from experts rather than all of it being strongly evidence-based. So the initial meetings tended to be a little bit looser than what they are now. That's not to say they were bad guidelines, but the process of guideline development was very new at the time. And then they became a little bit more evidence-based. And then more recently, and certainly in the present time, we have a bit of an industry built up around guideline development. This is not just for movement, by the way, but a lot of guidelines around, well, any health behavior and probably way beyond. And you have systematic reviews either undertaken or very, very closely reviewed for evidence updates, and you use particular guideline tools such as GRADE and what's called adolpment, which is sort of adaptation or of existing guidelines, adopting or adapting existing guidelines. Is there evidence to change something? Is there evidence to shift the dial, as they say, to make a new guideline? Or is the current guideline sufficient? Is the evidence supporting what we're already saying? And GRADE is a process. I won't spend any time on this today, but is a very detailed process where you evaluate the certainty of evidence. So the whole development of essentially physical activity guidelines or movement behavior guidelines in its current form has changed over the years, and it's become a lot more sophisticated. So what I want to do today, just in the brief time that we have, is to pose these three questions, and I'd like to hopefully pick up some question and answers on this later on. So, the obvious question is, well, why do we have guidelines? What's the purpose? And thereby, what are the advantages? But surely there are some limitations as well. Now, under purpose, we might want to revisit what the guidelines actually say, and Sjaan had a very nice graphic on that. But if you were to read the actual just one section of the WHO guideline, and I'm going to read it for you. So for adults, adults should do at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic physical activity, or at least 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity, or an equivalent combination of moderate intensity and vigorous intensity activity throughout the week for substantial health benefits. Now, when I mentioned to my son, who's now in his 30s, but at the time was about 5, when I mentioned to him the title of an article I was writing, it sounded something like that statement I've just made. And his comment was, as a 5-year-old, well, that trips off the tongue, doesn't it? In other words, it's a bit complicated, isn't it? It's a bit complex. It's a bit convoluted. So although the purpose of guidelines might be, we think, clear in our head, that's a lot of information to take in. So how are we going to make use of it? And actually in front of me, and I'm certainly not going to read it, you'll be grateful to know, there are 5 other bullet points under the heading of adult current WHO guidelines. And if you think I'm giving WHO guidelines criticism, it's not my intention. I was part of the process of developing them. It's simply to say there's a lot in here. So, we're the experts, probably. All of us around this table are probably experts. I saw some of the names of participants. You pretty much know what these guidelines are and what the purpose is, but do other people who might have a say in how they're going to be used? And one immediate question you might have, if you're a naive observer to this, 150 to 300 minutes, 150, 60, 150 divided, too complicated, no idea how long that is. Okay, actually we know it's 2.5 to 5 hours because I worked it out before the webinar. So what are the purposes of guidelines? Well, one obvious one would be to provide credible recommendations. They've been chewed over by so-called experts. They've gone through the mill. Recent guidelines go through the middle of checking and stakeholder consultation and so on and so forth. Lots of feedback. It's amazing. We don't just think around a table, write them down, and then that's it. So they are credible recommendations, one hopes, with the purpose, of course, to enhance health. And that's an interesting thing in itself, that you're actually, looking to enhance health. Is that all that we do? And so some of the advantages might be that we guide people towards goals. We guide organizations and stakeholders to understand about how much is enough. And with that, we definitely can help the monitoring of trends. A lot of studies these days, whether they are national surveillance studies or research studies, standalone research studies, they often talk about the extent to which people have met guidelines. And meeting guidelines gets you over a threshold. What are these people doing, and what's the percentage of different subgroups, and so on and so forth. So it definitely helps monitor progress and trends, although of course that also begs the question, what happens if we change the guidelines? And the guidelines are nearly all based, by the way, it's probably not true to say all based, but have been over time based on self-reported, or what we call reported, levels of physical activity, rather than levels of physical activity measured through devices. You could also say an advantage is that it boosts the visibility of this behavior. It makes physical activity maybe look more important, or as important as it should be. Otherwise, it might get lost if there are no guidelines. Does that mean it's not important? Does it do guidelines make physical activity feasible and acceptable? You know, here's a behavior that's being suggested at levels that one hopes would be feasible and acceptable. And in terms of movement behavior guidelines, the 24-hour model, we can show how those interactions work and what the payoffs might be. You know, how about doing less sedentary, a bit more light physical activity, etc., etc. But of course, there will be some limitations. They could be too rigid. 150 minutes. Supposing I do 149, have I failed? They could be too complex, particularly around the movement behavior guidelines, where we're talking to people about sleep, sedentary, light, moderate to vigorous. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. And is it only about health? Of course, given the agenda for Manna, where does mental health fit in? Well, mental health is central to all of this, but it doesn't actually get such a good mention as physical health. And a lot of the evidence to draw up guidelines is usually quite simply based around rather gross physical health outcomes like mortality. And have we missed out certain behaviors, such as steps? Why don't steps feature in many of the guidelines? And we've been working on this in the Australian guideline, but it's tough to get those integrated alongside some of the other guidelines. And of course, the big question is, this is not really a limitation or an advantage. You can take it as you want. Do they make any difference? And of course, you know, one of the key points, and again, when guidelines were first developed, this actually didn't happen. But and by the way, Tracy, I can't see. Oh, yes, I can see you now. Right, thank you. You've given me the signal. The shepherd's crook. In the early days, people never even thought about what guidelines would do. Would they work? Who do they work for? So I'll wrap up by saying that, you know, to make a difference, I think we need to cascade these guidelines in completely different forms from what they are currently written into tangible potential strategies, policies, whatever, at local and organizational level. So we take the current guidelines and almost rewrite them for that. We adapt them to context and we make them flexible. And we take the main guideline, we simplify it, we adapt it, we promote it. And if I can just make one last comment, we've done some work around sedentary behavior guidelines, particularly like around screen guidelines with parents. And the parents are very clear. They want this to be flexible and to fit into people's real lives. So that's something perhaps we ought to think about. So I'll stop there. I'll stop sharing and I'll hand it back to Tracy. Thanks very much, Tracy.
Thank you, Stuart. And I think it's interesting to know how the guidelines come about. I think for all of us here today and going forward, the challenge is, do guidelines actually change behavior? And, you know, when you read off the guidelines, I felt like it was a 20-mark question I needed to remember and be able to recite. And so it might be quite hard to translate guidelines into habitual levels of physical activity. And I think that's what's exciting about having Kate Darby as our next speaker, because for Kate, it's the practical part. So Kate is an AFLW player with Geelong Cats, and her incredible commitment to the community has been recognized by no less than 4 Carter Family Community Champion Awards. Kate is a passionate advocate for grassroots initiatives and brings a unique regional perspective to our sport, movement, and community engagement, contributes to mental health and well-being. And Kate, I'm so excited to hear what you have to share with us today. Over to you.
Thank you, Tracy. And thanks to Sjaan and Stuart as well. As Tracy said, I'm going to be a bit of a different speaker. I don't have that incredible knowledge that you both had. It was really good to listen to, but I'm definitely not coming in here with the knowledge of the guidelines, the statistics or anything like that. It's more just about some personal stories, I guess, and just speaking around physical activity. I'm going to go over probably 3 areas of physical activity in my life. So how I've seen physical activity affect others in communities or people in need or people that I've met throughout my journey, how physical activity has affected me and my life, and then how I see it probably coming into the future generations. I have a 4-year-old little girl, so how I now change my mindset in terms of how I see it affecting the kids that are around us all growing up and how important it is. I'd first like to acknowledge, so I'm actually on Wathaurong country. I'm at the football club. I didn't get a chance to go home, so Wathaurong country in Geelong. So I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners there. So yeah, the first thing I'm going to speak about, I guess, is how within the lucky position that I'm in within the AFL environment, we've gotten a lot of opportunities to go out to different communities, football clubs, schools, hospitals, a lot of different places to meet some incredible people. But obviously, because we are with the football club, a lot of what we talk about and what we bring is all about movement, physical activity, sport, and all the rest of that. So I think there's a couple of things that I want to cover in terms of how I've seen physical activity affect the life of others. So the two first examples off the bat, as I said, I've been lucky enough to visit hospitals. And within my first year within the league, we did a hospital visit to the Royal Children's Hospital, and I met a young girl who changed my perspective of football plus life plus everything. She was incredible. It was a young girl, very quick backstory, going through a horrible time with cancer, quite an aggressive cancer. She was only 7. I think she was 7 when we met. And I remember just thinking that this kid is just going through, what none of us would even like to imagine. And I just remember the pure joy and happiness that she brought to the conversation as soon as it was about football. She was a footy nut. I was playing with Carlton at the time, so I was lucky because she only spoke to Carlton players. So I was lucky to meet her. She'll now still talk to me, which is okay. And I just remember we met this really incredible young girl who was talking everything football. We were signing, we were giving her things and all the rest of it, just the same as all the other kids we'd met. And I remember one particular thing, she had these huge, giant necklaces next to her bed. And I remember they were beaded necklaces, and we thought she had done some sort of art class. And each bead was actually a different procedure that she had. And so it was a real slap in the face for me. I've been lucky enough not to be involved in that space before that moment. And I remember thinking, how is this kid who's going through this much so joyful? And I've since gotten to know her more and more, and her relationship with physical activity is her joy. I'm happy to say that since she's better and she's at home and she's back in her sport, and in speaking with her mum, it's the place where she feels like she's not sick. She's one of the normal kids out there. She's having fun. She's able to move her body. Her passion for football, even if she's not out there playing, her passion being a part of a team and a community and all that was a huge thing of getting her through those really difficult times that her and her family went through. And so I found it incredible. I was in a really lucky position to be a part of a team, and sport's always been a part of my life, but to see it affect someone on that level was really impressive. I've now got another friend who she's just turned 10, and she's going through treatment for brain cancer. And my 4-year-old daughter is obsessed with her, so we catch up with them all the time. They're good friends, and this is someone else who, again, she's still going through all this treatment. And I've seen her mum put up, posts and things on Instagram. As soon as she gets out of hospital, she's trying to go to her swimming training, to her soccer practice. We've gotten her to come down to our club and be a part of our club and our team, and And again, this connection to physical activity, surrounded by the community that you're with to do the physical activity, has been such a huge moment for these young girls going through such huge things and barriers in their life. And one last one on how I've seen it affect community. I think sometimes it can be hard. I know I'm really lucky and fortunate in terms of being involved with such a big football club within a league that is well followed by our country, but sometimes those smaller, whether it's smaller sports or smaller communities, can be forgotten about. And something that I'm really proud that Geelong does quite well is the connection to community within our region. And so I know there's a really big following of football out in the Warrnambool space, which is a few hours from here. And although they really get the big clubs and everything down there, but Geelong makes a real good point of bringing down a training session, one of the AFLW games, and we have a whole week of school visits, community visits, community clubs get involved, people come in to learn about how they can be involved and how they can get their community and bring them along with them. So I think that, it's very easy to access the schools that are right around this space, and we've got so many of them right within our area, but to make sure that we get out to those smaller areas, because I feel like the community within the physical activity space, so all the different sports or running groups or however that looks, it's such an important area. And so if we can make sure we get out to those smaller rural areas, it's really important for them to be involved as well. And the town gets up and about. They absolutely love it, which it brings joy. I've been lucky enough to see so much joy brought from physical activity. And speaking of joy and physical activity, the next little topic I'm going to speak about is how physical activity has affected my life. And I'm lucky to say that physical activity has always been a part of my life. I came from I'm in a family of people who've always loved sport, and I've always had a dog that I've been able to walk. I've always had a brother that we're being competitive outside, running around, having a kick in the footy, whatever it might be. I've been involved in sport my whole life, which is obviously a way to make sure that you're getting that physical activity for the day. As Stuart was speaking before, sometimes those guidelines can be really tricky to keep on track of, but also understand, and if you're clocking those minutes, it can be pretty tricky. But if you're involved in something that you're doing because you want to do it or because you enjoy it, it makes it really easy to tick those things off. So I've been lucky in that. And I found that, so as I said before, I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and I know that physical activity was I probably didn't realize how important it would be for me post having my daughter. I think, for anyone out there that is a parent, you can understand that sometimes you just get so sucked into being the best parent you can be that you start to lose the identity of anything outside of that. And so I remember when I first had my little Ella, and I was so entrenched in the chaos that is the first part of motherhood. And I remember starting to make sure I was putting things in place so I had to be physically active. And that just started to make me feel like me again, and getting back involved with football once that was safe to do so, getting back around the people that are within my football world. It just gave me my identity back. So obviously I could still be mum, but I was able to be a better person, a better mother for my daughter, because I had that outside interaction and movement, which was super important for me. And whether it's small things like walking her with the pram, or once she was big enough, I had a little bike a little seat on my bike, things like that. But then it was also even now, I mean, she's been in daycare today, and I'm at the football club, and I'm doing my thing that's involved in movement, physical activity, and getting around the people that make me feel good in that space as well. So lastly, because I know that we're on a time limit here, I just want to really quickly speak about physical activity and its importance for the younger generations. And obviously I come at a lens where I have a preschooler, and I know, so before I had Ella, I actually worked for an organisation, and we were building physical activity programs, I guess, to hit different people at different stages of life. And my job was to build a program to increase the physical literacy of preschoolers. And all the studies and all the data that we got showed that kids are heading into primary school and they don't have the ability to kick a ball, to catch a ball, to throw a ball. And I feel like if you're heading into primary school and those things aren't natural for you, then you're pulling away already from an opportunity that is to be involved in physical activity, involved in movement and team sports and things like that, which is so important moving forward in so many aspects. Teamwork, communication, resilience, and obviously the physical benefits as well. And mental health, as Stuart just spoke really well on before. So that the program that we created, to see these young kids who were 3, 4, 5 learning things that initially they didn't have the access to. It was such a simple little thing. I got a whole bunch of squishy balls, brought it into their kindergarten, and all I was doing at stages was teaching them how to throw it up and catch it again. And very, very small thing for me to do, but for some of these kids, they didn't have the ability or someone to sit with them and teach them that. And I saw kids go from thinking that as soon as they couldn't do it once, that was it, and they were pulling out and they couldn't do it anymore, to, you know, with a little bit of a light push and encouragement, the fact that they could learn some resilience, and if it doesn't work, try it again, and seeing the flip side of them being super proud of themselves and wanting to be involved in things like this. And that just opens up so many different things for them in terms of community, friendship, belonging, confidence, and so many things working forward. So I know that I've probably just steamed through a little bit of stuff there and thrown a lot of, you know, my own things. And I know everyone comes from a different space, but I just see personally so many benefits of physical activity in the ways that we can use it. And it's not just physical. There's just so many ways around it. So thank you for listening. And I hope that we get some questions so that I can actually, you know, make sure I'm speaking out what you would like to hear today.
Oh, Kate, you know what? I could have listened to you for another hour. It was just so captivating and really such a good way to translate essentially theory into practice. And I do have a bit of a burning question for you, Kate. Just with children and what you were saying about them going into primary school and not having some of the movement skills, I suppose to position this that I'm an immigrant to Australia. Do you feel that Australia is so risk averse that it's now having an impact on how much we as parents let our children run and play and scrape a knee? Or am I being just difficult?
No, I think it's pretty spot on, unfortunately. And you see, I mean, everyone's different. I tried my best to be you know, I've heard a saying once before on a parenting podcast, and it was to keep them safe as necessary, not safe as possible. So say, for instance, my daughter is in a very big climbing tree stage, and I just let her go for it, because as I say to her, as long as you've got 3 points of contact on the tree, you go. If you get stuck, I'm not going to come and pick you up and take you down because you got yourself there. So then I'm going to help you. I'm going to be there in case she falls, because it's safe as necessary. I'm not going to let her fall 5 meters from a tree and be like, well, should have done it. But I'm also not going to be 100% hands-on as soon as she feels like there's a challenge, because then she never feels like she can work through that challenge by herself. So I think it's difficult because we do have, you know, there's probably a little bit of that risk averse, like a lot of playgrounds are changing, and a lot of it is for the good, and they're trying to keep a lot of that, you know, risky play in. But I think with the technology coming in and the other things that are taking over, kids just aren't as natural as what they were years ago with all those simple things that we were taking into the preschool. So I don't know if I've gone a bit of in roundabouts, but I think you're right, and I think we probably need to, find ways that we can promote them to be out there more and more, which I think there's more coming in now to do so.
I think your safe as necessary is really useful advice for people that, not just parents, but people that are in the space of children or young children. Please feel free to add questions to the Q&A, and Alex will manage that. But there's just 2 comments for you, Kate. The one is from Letitia to say, you've given such a wonderful example of the role of the healing power of physical activity, not only to process trauma, but to belong, feel connected, as well as the physiological benefits to the body. And the other comment is, you've mentioned a few times that you feel lucky to be in your position. But it's really, we are in luck as women and girls to have a leader like you to look up to, and lucky to hear your heartfelt reflections. So
Thank you. It's funny,
touched.
I actually try and pull myself up on that sometimes, because there's elements of both. I almost missed the boat with the AFLW system. It's all I wanted to do when I was a kid, when it wasn't possible. And I thought I missed the boat because I am on the older end of the league now. But so I think I am lucky that I was able to still just get that opportunity in, because I've met many women. I met a 90-plus-year-old woman the day that we got drafted to say that I better appreciate where I am, because she would have been I wouldn't say the word that she said, and something superstar. Also, I understand that I don't want to project that it all is all just luck, because obviously people have to work really hard. But no, I'm lucky to be here, so thank you.
Thanks, Kate. The next question is for Sjaan, and is from Venus Mbuzi, and wanting to know about whether there's programs that have been recommended for workplaces to encourage the employees to be more active. And I suppose that in part relates to the ISPA 8 investments.
Yeah, sure. So the ISPA 8 Best Investments workplace section will speak to some overarching concepts, and I'm having a little giggle here because if I remember rightly, Tracy, you may have actually been the one that wrote it. So here I am getting to take the glory for for all your hard work. However, we are really lucky in Australia to have a program called Be Upstanding, which I'll drop the link for in the chat. It is an evidence-based, Tracy, I don't know if you could perhaps do it, because I can't find a way to talk to everybody in the chat.
I'll ask Alex to do that.
Thank you. Be Upstanding is a ready-made program that's gone all the way from sort of initial evidence-based practice through to translation and scaling up. It's all web-based, that supports desk-based workers to be able to work together, to be able to address inactivity and sedentary behaviour at work. So I'm very pleased to promote one of my colleagues' programs there. But if you want to have a little bit of a more broad read, then the ISPA 8 Best Investments will talk to that as well.
Thanks, Sjaan. And I'm standing up and doing squats. I think the next question from Christian is really important, with Manna being really representing, and we are from the region. So any one of the speakers can jump in with an answer. We've only got about 2 minutes left, but really, how do we promote, or what are your thoughts on promoting physical activity and the mental health benefits in the regional, rural, and the remote communities? I don't want to be that teacher that points someone else out, but I suppose even Kate, from your perspective, because Geelong is regional, you know, what are some of the challenges you've seen, and some advice that you can give us to try to get regional areas more physically active?
I I mean, I guess it's sometimes it's access to resources. So whether that's, I mean, yeah, as I said before, like there's only certain times that we can head out to the areas that, 3.5, 4 hours away. But even if it's the delivery of equipment to different places to then get, like, say for instance, obviously from a football perspective, when we do our visits, we also bring a few bags of balls and some handball targets and some all this, and be like, we might be only here for a certain amount of time and then we're going to go, but this is yours, and this is what you can continue to use and continue growing that group of people and that little community that you've got to keep being involved in that space. And then there's challenges. I mean, I'm an ambassador for the Peace of Mind Foundation, which supports families of children that have brain cancer, and they're doing a try challenge at the moment, through May, sorry. And so that's another way of, because it's all online and you can just be wherever you are, so anyone can be involved with this try challenge. It's all about how far you can either ride, swim, or run or walk for the month of May. And so there's certain ways that you can reach out in those areas, and maybe that's a couple of them.
That's a great idea, and I'll give it back to Stuart. And Ruthie or Alex, if there's a way for us to put that try challenge on Manna's website and for us to disseminate it via Manna, that would be great. Stuart.
Well, this may not be unique to regional, rural, or whatever. It could be, it's a general point, and that is, we know that we need to be providing more opportunities for people, and if we think about where we've lost physical activity, that might be a starting point. And we know that in a lot of environments, for example, we've lost it because of motorized transport or the way we've set up our environments or what have you. So can we find opportunities that are the more active opportunities? Actually, Sjaan, right at the beginning, mentioned about her active commuting, and active travel is one of the 8 best investments. So now, that's not to say everybody can actively commute, and maybe in rural settings that becomes more problematic because of distances, but let's look for opportunities. It's a simple statement, but I think it's something that can at least get us started.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for the session today. I would really like to encourage you to take the opportunity to stand up, do a couple of squats, go for a walk. Not all of us have Kate's amazing football skills, but we can find a way to move. And so just to end off today, as you sign off, maybe you can listen to one of the songs I start my lectures on. I don't know if you can hear that, but anyway. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you around.